My daughter destroyed me on social media after her friend's false accusation of abuse because she believes all women, but now she can believe a judge who left her without my money. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a man. I describe my relationship with my daughter, who is 17, as unstable. I love her as much as any father loves his child, but I must admit that the teenage years have been challenging. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm lamenting the old days when she was little and everything seemed simpler, because honestly it never was simple. Her mother and I are not together now. We never were. I admit that what we had was a casual, drunken encounter in college during the summer before my junior year. She had already graduated. From what I recall, we used protection, and she definitely told me she was on birth control, but sometimes things happen. Since she wasn't interested in adoption or other options, 9 months later, we welcomed our little girl. I really tried to make things work between us. Unfortunately, my drunk 20-year-old self wasn't the best judge of character after a night of partying in college. The woman I ended up getting pregnant wasn't someone I could have a long-term relationship with, to put it kindly, or rather, any kind of relationship. Let's call her Steph. Steph seemed great in the middle of the night when we were both drunk, but being pregnant and trying to make it work between us was a completely different setting. I'm not saying I was a saint without fault, okay? I was a college student in my junior year. Of course, I wasn't a saint, not by a long shot, but I feel like I did my best to make our relationship work. She isn't the type of person you can make things work with. To avoid harsher words, I'll say she's selfish, arrogant, and the moment she found out my parents had some money, she refused to make any effort to support herself because, in her words, that's a man's job. Well, our relationship, if you can even call it that, didn't make it to the end of her second trimester. I tried not to hold it against her. We were young, we were foolish, and we had a child on the way. When she blamed me from the hospital room but still expected my parents to pay the bill, I didn't say a word. I was in the waiting room as she banned me from entering until the nurses let me meet my daughter, Madison, in the neonatal ICU. She was perfect. She went home with her mother, but we agreed I'd be there as much as possible because she was also my daughter. Steph quickly broke that agreement, stopping me from seeing Madison based on her mood. By her first birthday, we already had a formal custody arrangement, which heavily favored Steph because I was still in college while she could stay home with Madison. The court-ordered child support wasn't very high, considering I hadn't started working yet, but my parents were more than generous with their only granddaughter, so Steph lived off that money. The early years were the best and worst. Dealing with Steph was never pleasant, but Madison was a blessing, no matter how unexpected she was. Being able to see her made enduring her mother a million times worth it, and I never let any of our problems get in the way. Every year after that became harder as Madison grew older. As is often the case with daughters, she became very close to her mother, and many of Steph's opinions became hers. Considering Steph doesn't like me very much, you can imagine what that meant. By the time she was 10, Madison would throw a fit every time she had to see me, even more so when she had to spend weekends with me. Typical teenage anger, you know? It seems that only made things worse. I'm not an absent father. I see my daughter as often as I can, which, thanks to the court-ordered custody arrangement she herself asked for as a teen, is every other weekend. She spends Friday, Saturday, and Sunday here, and then I don't see her for 2 weeks. She doesn't hide the fact that she doesn't want to be here. I do my best. Her room is full of everything she's asked for, and I make sure all her favorite snacks and drinks are always available. I plan activities and things for us to do together, but respect her decision if she says no. Practically every time she says no. Last year, my daughter started inviting her friends over whenever she came to my house. It could be a whole group or just one, but there was always someone here with her. The most frequent visitor is Claire. I'm afraid I've left the most important part for last because the situation that has brought me here has less to do with Madison and more with Claire. I just wanted to explain where this all began. This weekend was my time to have my daughter, as usual. An hour or two after Madison arrived on Friday, yesterday, she invited Claire to come over. This time, Claire was going to stay the entire weekend with Madison, and the last thing I want is to kick out her friend and give her another reason to hate me besides everything her mother has told her about me. So I didn't say anything about it. I never do, no matter how unexpected it is when her friends show up or what I have planned. I don't want Madison to completely hate her time here, regardless of what she may think. Claire, as far as I knew before this weekend, is a good kid. Maybe a little chatty and prone to oversharing, but overall, a nice person. She spends most of her time locked in Madison's room and doesn't really come out. All I knew was that she just stayed in that space. I wish it had stayed that way because last night, when I went downstairs to the kitchen for a glass of water, Claire walked in, saying she thought she heard me coming downstairs. I smiled, asked if she wanted water too, pointed to where the glasses were, although I'm sure she already knew, and prepared to leave. She didn't move from the doorway, even when it was clear I wanted to pass, and she raised her hand almost to touch my chest. But I stepped away. She told me she needed to tell me something. She said she'd been struggling with it for months and that 2 weeks ago, she made a decision. Now, she had finally managed to get me alone. She said something like she knew I was Madison's dad, that she loved how I always made time for her, ensured she had everything she wanted, and really took care of her. She said she found all those qualities incredibly attractive. That's when I started to feel the conversation taking a strange turn. From the beginning, I felt a little uncomfortable, but from that point on, alarm bells started going off, so to speak. She said she found me incredibly attractive and figured I must be lonely during the weeks Madison wasn't here. She offered to keep me company during that time. Guys, I'm a grown man, nearly 40 years old. It was clear to me that an 18-year-old girl was doing her best to show interest in me, despite me being the father of one of her best friends. It was extremely inappropriate, but she's a kid, and I tried to reject her gently. I explained exactly what I just wrote. I'm way too old, I'm her friend's father, this was inappropriate, and while she's a lovely girl, I see her more as a daughter than anything else. Only when she persisted again, trying to convince me to give her a chance, did I make the boundaries clear. I wasn't interested in giving her any chance. I'm an adult. Yes, she may legally be an adult, but in every other sense, she's a kid. I don't know exactly what made her realize the message, but after a while, she just nodded without saying a word and ran upstairs. Considering it was almost 4 a.m., I put my glass in the dishwasher and went to bed. By the time I woke up this morning, Claire was already gone. Apparently, she packed her bags right then and called an Uber at 6 in the morning. Based on Madison's sharp mood, I've deduced that Claire didn't explain her sudden departure to her friend. Madison is supposed to go home tomorrow, which basically means I have 24 hours to decide if this is a topic I want to address with her. And if I do, how on earth do I even do it? I'm worried I may have been too harsh in rejecting Claire's advances, but I also feel it was necessary. I know Madison won't see it that way. She'll only hear that I was horrible to her friend and have something new to hold against me. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Is this something I should even address, or should I just let it go and avoid the absolute embarrassment for Claire? I don't know. Update 1. Well, I guess confused is a good word to describe how I've been feeling over the past few hours. I've already contacted my lawyer, so please don't flood me with comments telling me to get off the internet and find legal representation. I've already done that. You see, this is how I process everything. So feel free to scroll past if you don't want to read this. Read my previous post if you want the context to make sense of this. My daughter Madison went home on Sunday afternoon, a little earlier than usual. She said she had plans, so I didn't give it much thought, especially since she was supposed to spend the weekend with me to make up for some lost custody time last month. I missed that time because her mother, Steph, took her to a wedding on her side of the family. Well, Steph texted me last night, telling me not to expect Madison this weekend. I replied, asking for an explanation, but all she said was that Madison was determined never to come to my house or see me again. She added that I could talk to my daughter myself if I wanted to know more because she wasn't my intermediary. I called Madison, but she didn't answer, so I thought maybe she was busy. I texted her, asking her to talk to me. 2 hours later, I saw that right after I called her, she made a post on her public Instagram story. It was a screenshot of my call with a caption saying she couldn't believe her predator father was trying to call her. A few minutes later, she posted another screenshot, this time of my text asking her to talk, with the added comment that I must be trying to cover my tracks, but she wasn't going to let me talk my way out of this. Guys, I immediately called Steph, asking why our daughter was calling me that. All she said was that she wasn't a mediator, and that if Madison didn't want to talk to me, that was her problem. Then she added that I should stop trying to pressure teenage girls into doing what I want. That last comment caught my attention, and I pressed her, asking what she was talking about. Again, she just repeated that it wasn't her job to explain anything to me, and then hung up the call. I kept trying to reach Madison, but then I saw she had posted more stories. Due to the nature of the situation, I'll keep the details of what she posted sparse, but essentially, it was a blank screen with some lines of text. The text explained how I assaulted her friend Claire in a very serious way when they stayed with me last weekend, and that Claire had only just told her. It went on to say that she would always believe and support the victim, and that she believed all women. Although she was shocked and disgusted that her father was capable of something like that, she would support Claire for being brave enough to come forward. The stories were lengthy but vague about the details of what supposedly happened. However, the main accusation, that I somehow assaulted Claire, was clear. She said Claire left the house in a panic shortly afterward. Guys, I'm not an idiot. I know how serious something like this is, and while I didn't do anything I'm being accused of, I promise you, I've seen situations like this go badly for people. I contacted my lawyer immediately and let them advise me on the next steps. The first step was to create a record of every post, every story, and every claim made. Then, I was to try to contact Steph to better understand what was going on and how this came to be. Today is Tuesday. It's been 2 days since Madison was at my house, 3 since Claire was, and I still don't know what could have prompted something like this. Update 2. Wow. I wish I could say everything has been cleared up or that it was all a bad dream or something, but in reality, things have only gotten worse since my last update. It's not even Saturday yet. It hasn't even been a week since the day my daughter's friend tried her feelings on me, and now she's posting online, claiming that I was the one who made advances on her in the middle of the night in my kitchen and did inappropriate things. That's the summary, by the way. Madison still isn't talking to me, but Claire has decided to step in. Social media is blowing up, thanking Madison for supporting Claire despite me being her father and for being brave enough to stand up to me. My lawyer has one of their interns or someone keeping a record of all the posts, since neither my daughter nor her friend have private accounts. I was informed of this after it started. I've uninstalled all my social media apps for now, but I've been advised not to deactivate anything or make drastic changes. I haven't done anything wrong. I don't need to act like I'm guilty. In the past 3 days, Madison and Claire have been very active on their social media, even doing a live video where their followers asked questions about what happened. All of this was recorded by my lawyer. So far, it's been a mix of stories that disappear after 24 hours and long essays with black screens and white text about what happened and Claire's emotional state. Guys, I'm not going to detail everything for the sake of my privacy and because I simply don't want to reread what's already been said. I can't see how people are responding to all of this, apart from the live video, which had 2 viewers who interacted with them. I've been assured that the reach of their accusations is limited, given that their accounts are small. But to be honest, that doesn't make me feel any better. At any moment it could go viral, and things would be even worse. I've been delaying making a public statement because I wanted to talk to my daughter first and because my lawyer advised me to. Well, I got my wish. She actually answered my call this afternoon when she got back from school. She spent the entire conversation ignoring everything I said, telling me I was disgusting and that she was embarrassed to be my daughter. She said, and I quote, "Rich white men think they own everything and everyone, and no matter what anyone says, I will always believe a woman." She added that all men are guilty until proven innocent and that I am guilty. Guys, there's no evidence on either side. I wish I had cameras in my kitchen or that my doorbell camera had miraculously captured everything happening in this house, but there's absolutely nothing to prove what really happened. No matter how much I deny Claire's claims, Madison has made it clear that my words are not enough. To her, her father is a pervert, and she'll never come back to my house. Update 3. Here I am, marking 1 week of this strange hell I woke up to. My daughter no longer wants to be my daughter. We haven't had a good relationship since she was a child. I know every negative opinion her mother has about me is firmly embedded in her mind by now, and there's very little I can do to change that. But I've tried. I think that despite everything, I've done my best to be a good father to her, even if in recent years all she wanted from me was my checkbook. I've done everything I can. There comes a point in every parent's life where they have to accept that their child is no longer a child. They are responsible for their own actions. Even if they still live under your roof and you love them to pieces and provide for them, they are independent people. Part of me never wanted to accept that Madison is growing up. She's practically grown at this point. Maybe it's because I feel I've missed out on so much time with her, or because I feel like I'm always dealing with the parts of her that come from her mother. It's like I blinked, and suddenly she's almost an adult who hates me. Accepting that her hatred is entirely her own, and not just an extension of her mother, is probably the part I'm struggling with the most. If I could go back in time and change things, I don't even know what I'd change. Steph has never been an easy person to deal with. No matter what I've done, I can't imagine a scenario where Madison and I would have had a better relationship. Am I just destined to be hated by my own daughter no matter what I do? Is that self-pity or self-awareness? I haven't had any luck trying to reach Madison since our call, but her mother showed up at my door a few hours ago with an envelope of papers and that smug look on her face. She was talking about how she always knew I wasn't cut out to be a father, but she really never thought it would be this bad. Guys, she was delivering paperwork to terminate my parental rights. I doubt she could have gotten them overnight, considering I just spoke to Madison yesterday. But everything was already signed, both by Steph and Madison. All I have to do is put my signature on the first page and a few others, and legally, I'll no longer be Madison's father. Steph says Madison can't even bear the idea of me right now, and that she came home from school the day before and signed everything immediately before talking to me. So now I know why Madison decided to answer my call. It was, according to her, the last time she'd have to speak to her disgusting father. Steph's visit wasn't just to deliver the papers. Primarily, she came to gloat about how much better of a mother she is. All I've been able to do in the past few hours is send photos of each page to my lawyer. I'll update you once I know what's happening. Update 4. Maybe everything I'm about to write contradicts my claim that I'm not, nor have I ever been, an irresponsible father, but I feel this was the best decision I could make given the circumstances. My lawyer agrees. Both Claire and Madison received cease and desist notices. Madison was becoming increasingly combative with every attempt I made to talk to her about all this. Even I knew it wouldn't be a good idea to initiate any kind of contact with Claire, supervised or not, given the nature of her accusations and her willingness to broadcast everything on Instagram. Having my lawyer handle everything with Claire was the only sensible option. Since Madison was also posting so much about the situation and supporting all the false accusations, she received a notice as well. None of this was done out of spite or related to the termination of parental rights papers. All my feelings about that situation have been kept entirely separate. The cease and desist notices were simply the smartest move to make. I don't make it a habit to lash out at teenagers, and I wasn't about to start just because I was stressed about what these particular teenagers were throwing at me. I thought it over carefully, talked it through with my lawyer, and we went ahead with it. Quickly, it became apparent that, while Claire was open about everything online, she'd kept her parents completely in the dark. Maybe it was because we acted before things got too out of hand, but we're pretty sure Claire actively hid the situation from her parents. The same day the cease and desist notice was sent, my lawyer's office received a call from Claire's father, completely confused about what was going on. I was told that's when everything was explained to them. They were legitimately horrified to hear that their daughter was claiming something like this had happened. The next day, they came back asking for my contact information so they could formally apologize. They spent the night talking to Claire about what had happened and eventually got her to admit that nothing had happened at all. From what I know, Claire's parents are busy and don't spend as much time at home as they'd like, but they love their daughter, and overall they have a good relationship with her. The fact that they're good parents was the only reason this all got resolved so quickly. They managed to get Claire to admit that nothing happened, delete all her posts, and even offer me an in-person apology for the accusations she made, all within a few days. When Madison found out Claire had retracted everything, the first thing she did was send me a flurry of texts saying that she'd been lied to. She said Claire had been so convincing and that she never wanted to believe her, but Claire was so upset and Madison was so overwhelmed that she blindly supported her friend. She said she still believes in always supporting women and that men are guilty until proven innocent, but she's really glad that I'm one of the ones who was proven innocent. Not a single apology, not one word of remorse, just message after message about how she was the real victim here. A few hours after I didn't reply, Madison showed up at my door with her mother behind her. She tried to hug me, but I stepped away. Since I didn't make any move to invite her in, she repeated much of what she'd said in her texts. When she finished, I simply handed her a copy of the papers her mother had given me. My signature was clear on every page, leaving no room for doubt. I had officially terminated my parental rights. I informed Madison that my lawyer had already filed the papers, so she didn't need to worry about it, and that I had arranged for a moving truck to take her things. I didn't have the strength to say anything more, and there wasn't a need. She just looked at the papers, threw them at her mother, and ran to the car. Then they left. I suppose I can finally put to rest the accusations of being an irresponsible father once and for all, as by law, I am no longer a father. Update 5. I forgot the password to my main account and, well, it's been tough to recover it. Luckily, I still have this account logged in on my phone. The original posts are on my profile, so if you want, you can read them. If you do, you'll know that in my last update a few months ago, Claire, my daughter's friend, was confronted by her parents after receiving the cease and desist letter. I mentioned that her parents forced her to apologize to me and delete all her posts. After all the drama caused by what Claire and Madison did, my lawyer suggested that a public apology from Claire would be a smart move. This would serve as something to refer to if this situation ever came up again. I'm sure Claire didn't like the idea, but her parents, who are good people, made sure she followed through, despite asking if there was anything else they could do to avoid this going on her public record. Claire has been grounded practically indefinitely for this incident. Things have progressed as expected, which is to say they haven't progressed at all. Despite being the one who initiated the termination of my parental rights, Madison absolutely refuses to accept that she's been disinherited. She's made several attempts to convince me that I'm still responsible for supporting her, especially for college. She even went so far as to post screenshots of the original conversation where Claire accused me, claiming to all her friends and followers that she was clearly deceived, and that Claire is a monster for causing a rift between her and her father. In response, Claire posted the full, unedited screenshots. They reveal that Madison believed Claire without question and even added fuel to the fire, saying, "I always knew he was a pervert. I've always wanted an excuse to ruin his life anyway. My lawyer has copies of all this and was the one who informed me about it." At this point, Steph and Madison could try to sue me or reverse the decision to terminate my parental rights, but with Madison about to turn 18, the time it would take in court and the cost of legal fees, which Steph definitely can't afford without my money, makes it unlikely they'll even attempt it. It's safe to say that every day, I'm more at peace with my decision. Call me a cruel and horrible father all you want. Steph certainly has. I don't care anymore. She lost her human ATM. Madison lost her inheritance and college fund. I lost a daughter. But maybe, just maybe, I've gained some peace. If that makes me cruel, so be it. Update 6. There are things I didn't mention in my last update because they could have ruined my plans. But now that the full truth has come to light, it's time to share what's really been going on. Thanks to some comments and advice from friends, I decided to take a DNA test to verify if Madison is actually my daughter. That's why I've been reaching out to her lately. I didn't mention it before because, if she found out, she might have refused to take the test. Also, I knew what some might think, that I was being soft and trying to reconcile with her. Either way, I met Madison in a public place to talk, which has been the only way I've been meeting with her lately. Better safe than sorry. I told her that if she really wanted to repair our relationship and perhaps receive financial support for college or whatever she decided to do after finishing school, she needed to take a DNA test with me. I admit it was hard to convince her since, if the result came back negative, it would clearly mean I'd have no further responsibilities toward her. However, I lied and told her that, no matter the result, I would still support her. I know it wasn't the best decision, but it was the only way to get the truth. If she wasn't my daughter, I'd been deceived my entire life, and I at least needed to know. Eventually, she agreed to take the test, and after a few weeks, we got the results. I tried to keep acting like a father to her, though somewhat distant, because I told her I needed time to heal. I wanted her to keep believing that, as if the test needed to be redone for any reason, I'd need to maintain a relatively cordial relationship. I also made her promise not to tell her mother. The last thing I needed at that moment was more drama with Steph. And, well, I don't think this will surprise anyone. The result was negative. Madison was never my daughter, at least biologically. But after everything that's happened lately, I don't think she was emotionally my daughter either. When I finally had the result, I cut off all contact with Madison and Steph. I blocked their numbers and eliminated any possibility of communication. Then, I contacted my lawyer, and we began a paternity fraud lawsuit. I'm convinced Steph knew this from the beginning, and I suspect Madison did too. That's why they both hated me so much. It wasn't just because Steph poisoned Madison against me. It was because they both conspired to drain me financially for all these years. That deep hatred had another reason behind it. So now we're suing, seeking to recover all the money I gave them during this time. At least one good thing came out of this. When they asked me to relinquish my parental rights, they did so right before Madison turned 18. That means they'll save a few months when it's time to pay me back. Anyway, I don't think this will be a problem for Madison in the end. If she hated me so much back then that she wanted to cut herself off from me and my money when she asked me to sign away my parental rights, I doubt things are any different now. I'll return with updates about the lawsuit and its results. Update 7. I want to clarify that none of this was ever about the money. I don't need the money to live better. I pursued this lawsuit because I hate when bad people get away with their actions. I believe that if people fight against these injustices, the world can be a better place, with consequences for liars, fraudsters, and cheats. And yes, I've recovered my money, or at least I've started to recover it. The lawsuit was resolved in my favor, and I'm satisfied with that result. The key to the case was an ex-friend of Steph's, who was more than willing to testify that Steph had known I wasn't the father for several years. At first I had doubts, but her new partner isn't so new. It turns out he's Madison's biological father, the one Steph cheated on me with when we were young. Whether Madison knew about this or not, I'll never know. It's one of those things that, even if I could find out, wouldn't change anything. To me, that person is now a complete stranger. Her attitude over the years has made it easier to emotionally detach from her than I imagined. I'm not saying it's been easy, but with everything I've gone through, especially in these past months, it's not surprising. Steph has started paying me back some of the money she owes me for all the years she made me believe I was Madison's biological father. It's not from the very beginning, as we could only prove she knew from the time she confessed to her ex-friend. Still, it's several years and a significant amount of money, at least for her. Madison, if she still had hopes of going to college or fulfilling her plans, We'll have to find another way to finance them, as I don't think her mother can help her now. She has her biological father, but from what little I know of him, he doesn't seem like the kind of man with that kind of money. Even so, while this might seem like a happy ending to my story, it certainly doesn't feel like one. Sure, it's good news, and I'm partly glad for the reasons I've mentioned, but that doesn't change how I feel now. I suppose the next steps will be finding a way to heal, but at least part of this story comes to an end, with those people I once called family.